So let's talk about lists. A list is essentially a collection of data, and the list structure can contain any of the data types. And you can create a list like this. Okay? So as you can see here, my list data structure contains 4 elements. And here we have 2 integers, and then we have a string, and then we have a Boolean. And I'm putting all these data objects into my list. So now let's assign this list to a variable, and we'll call this variable myList. So now if we were to print the list out, we can see that it's outputting our list. And one thing that is an indicator that this is a list is that everything is contained inside these square brackets. And in Python, when we create a list, we put all the data inside square brackets and we separate it with commas. And to access an element in our list, we can access it the same way that we do when we're trying to access characters in our string. So just like this, we'll put a square bracket, and let's say we want to access the element at index 2. If we run our code, as you can see, the output is 3. And now if we access the element at index 3, which is the last element, if we run our code, you can see we get the output that we're expecting. So now let's create a much more interesting list. So here we have a list of careers that are in demand, and we're naming our list CID. Side note, just don't do this. Don't make a variable name that is just a bunch of letters. It's hard to understand. But in this case, I put a comment here, so we can allow this. So CID here stands for careers in demand. So here we have a list of the careers in order. So from software developer to healthcare administrator and registered nurse. So in the same manner, if I was to print out this list, as you can see, we can see the output here. So like I mentioned, if we want to access elements in the list, we can use the same method that we use for accessing elements in our string, specifically using some slicing methods. And so if you remember, in our lesson for string slicing, this would basically get everything from the beginning of the list to the very first element, which essentially is going to give me the first elements. If I run my code, there we go. And let's try some other slicing methods. As you remember, this will give me the very last element. And we can even reverse our list like this. Now suppose we just want to display the first 2 elements. We can do that like that. So as you notice, there are some common trends in our programming. Whatever we can do with slicing with strings, we can do here with our list as well. So let me show you something else that you may remember. So this will basically give us the number of data that we have in our list object. So now let me run this code. As you can see, we have 3 data in there. So now suppose we want to add more elements in our list. In this case, we want to, instead of displaying just the top 3 careers in demand, we want to add a fourth carrier. Okay. In order to do this, we just use an append method, and then in here we are going to enter exactly what we want to append or add to our list. In this case, the fourth career would be a medical technician. This will automatically append medical tech to this. And then all I have to do is print out the CID. So if I run this, as you can see, medical tech has been added to the list. So now suppose I want to add a lot more items, okay? So instead of appending one at a time, I wanted to add several. In that case, we'll use a different type of method, and this is called extend. So if you notice here, we actually have another list in here. So we are basically appending a list to this CID list by using this extend method. It's just going to make changes to this CID variable. And all we have to do is print out the CID variable here. And if I run this code, as you can see, we have the top 5 in-demand careers now. So now suppose we have a very, very hot career that is in demand, and we are adding it to the list, but this time we're not adding it to the end of the list. We're adding it somewhere in the middle of the list. And to do that, we will use the insert method. And with the insert method, we just have to provide 2 parameters or inputs. And the first one would be the number or the index number that we want to insert the data at. And then the next one will be the data itself. Okay. And let's call this nurse assistant. Okay. So now if I run my code, as you can see, we've added nurse assistant to the 3rd position, or index number 2 of our list. So now suppose we want to join all the elements in our list together to make it just one string. And to do this, we would use the join method, okay? So to explain how this join method works, first we have what we call the delimiter or the separator here in the quotes, which is going to be just a simple hyphen. So first, before I even explain this, let me run this so that you can get an idea of what this would look like. So as you can see, we have the list of all the data separated by hyphens. And going back to this, I mentioned that whatever we put here in the quotes, this could be anything. Whatever we put here in the quotes would be what our list will be separated by. And this whole entire thing is going to be a string. So whatever variable that we're assigned it to, that variable's type is now going to be a string. So this list is essentially being converted from a list to a string that has, or a string that is divided by these colons. So now if I run this code, as you can see, we have a string which includes all the data that was in our list, separated by colons.